Hi everyone, welcome back to the Lightworkers. Today we have John with us. He practices family constellations and also a practitioner of the course in
A Course in Miracles.
miracles. Yeah. And I had the privilege and honor of attending one of his family constellation workshops in Houston, and it was the most healing and the most amazing experience I had in that room. So it was
Mm.
so wonderful, John.
Thank
So
you. Thank you
I
for that,
am so
Anisha.
happy that you're here talking about, what you do, sharing your knowledge and, telling us about your experience as a light worker. So yeah, let's start. So John, please tell us about, what you do, how you got into your healing journey, and yeah, everything about the modalities that you practice.
Okay, that's a big question. I'll see where to start. So we're not here for 3 hours. Um, but I guess my healing journey really started when I went to massage school in Miami in 2002. And that same year, I started going to Unity on the Bay in Miami. And those two things really turned my life around 180 degrees. Like things were not going so great for me
Hmm.
in that
Yeah.
year. I had a lot of challenges. So it just things opened up for me, and my massage school, it's not there anymore, unfortunately. It was called Educating Hands School of Massage, but it
Hmm.
it was definitely more the woo-woo school than the medical school. We learned about
Right.
crystals, we learned about energy work. That's the first time I ever heard the word energy work, was at that
Wow.
school. And we did essential oils, and it was a very good school for practical massage. I mean, you know, when you came out of that school, you didn't have a problem getting a job. It was a very good
Wow.
school, great
Hmm.
teachers, and it literally changed my life. Like it opened so many doors. In fact, one of my classmates was the person who introduced me to A Course in Miracles.
Mm.
So that was later, but yeah, it was a beautiful experience. So that's when my spiritual journey really kicked off
Hmm.
in massage school. And then
Hmm.
I noticed as I was giving people massages, they were always asking me questions, or I would get information about things like just from my intuition, from connecting with their energy. So I
Wow.
started asking, is it okay to share this with you? Or they would ask me things. And so that kind of transitioned into life coaching and spiritual coaching.
Mm.
And then from there, I moved to California in 2012, I guess,
Hmm.
and spent about 9 months there. Things didn't really work. I was going to go there to open a spiritual retreat center. Things didn't pan out for that. A lot of things fell away. So I got the guidance to move back to Miami. And that's
Hmm.
where I discovered Family Constellations. I was taking it was a book group. We were studying the book You Can Create an Exceptional Life, written by Louise Hay and
Mm.
Cheryl Richardson. And
Hmm.
one of the members of our group did this thing called Family Constellations. And she was talking about it. And I'll be honest, Anisha, when she first talked, I'm like, here we go, another modality, just what the world needs. And
Yeah.
I kind of dismissed it. But in that group, I also play crystal singing bowls. And so I was playing the bowl in the beginning of our group, and the woman said, "Oh, I teach, or I hold a meditation circle in my home every Wednesday night. Would you come and play your bowl?" I'm like, "Sure, that sounds great. I'd be happy to do that and meet some like-minded people." So I
Right.
did. And it was at that meditation that another participant started talking about family constellations and saying,
Mm.
"Oh my God, you've got to try it. It's amazing. It'll blow your mind. You won't believe what happens in these workshops." And I'm like, "Okay, you've got my attention." So
Hmm.
I went to the next one, that woman who became my teacher, her name is Michelle
Hmm.
Bleckner. She had one in her living room a couple times a month. And I went, and everything that other woman said about it was true. It blew my mind. I couldn't believe what happened. And I had
Yeah.
a powerful healing. And I said to the facilitator, "How do you learn how to do this?" And she said, "I'm so glad you asked. I'll teach you." And
Wow.
that became my journey with Family Constellations.
Wow. So your journey from like a masseuse to, a healer, energy healer, do you feel like there is a connection with, like, of course there is between body and mind, but like, do you feel like you developed it over time, like while you were doing the massages, or
I
like was it instinctively?
Absolutely. I think spirit knew exactly how to lead me one step at a time to
Mm.
the work that I do now. That each thing on the road, like before that, I worked at Disney World for 7 years in the
Oh.
entertainment department. And
Mm.
I was painfully shy before in high school and college. So that job gave me the confidence to be in front of a lot of people. I got to do it inside of a costume where no one could see who I was. And then being around that much joy and that magic, it really opened something up in me. So then when I left Disney and moved to South Florida, I had always done massage. Like I'd
Mm.
always be rubbing people's shoulders or my family members. And one of my friends said, John, why don't you go to massage school? You do it all the time anyway. So that,
Mm.
to your question, yeah, absolutely. That led me to massage. And then that opened me up to a whole nother thing from that school. I
Yeah.
got more and more in touch with my intuition and more in the flow and interested in healing. So yeah, it just kept expanding from there.
Yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit about the specific modalities, family constellation, and a course in miracles, and
Sure,
yeah.
sure. Well, the spiritual teaching that resonates most with my heart is A Course in Miracles. It answered more of my questions than anything else. It has most in common with Buddhism, actually,
Mm.
even though it has very Christian languaging in the course. But for me, the course is it's not a religion. It's just a spiritual thought system that helps you shift from fear to love, helps us
Mm.
choose more loving thoughts and release fearful thoughts, undoing the ego, as the course calls it, little by little, that voice of fear, and choose love. And so it it's so consistent, and it really it helped me through a really tough time with the end of a very tumultuous relationship. And then my mom moved to South Florida, and her addiction came out again. Like we thought she was going to start a whole new life in Florida living with me. And if anyone
Hmm.
who's been in relationships with people with addiction, which is most of us at this point,
Yes.
a family member or friends or partners, yeah, I was under a big fantasy that she wasn't gonna start drinking again when she
Yeah.
moved to Florida. So that whole thing, but because of the course, I really was able to navigate that much better than I think I would have without it. And
Mm.
that, I often call my mother my master teacher. I think we signed up for this lesson on unconditional love. And before
Mm.
she passed in 2011, I think we got there. And she really helped me to let go of judgment. I think we got to the place where I accepted her as she was, she accepted me as I was. I gave up trying to stop her from drinking and just set some healthy boundaries around it. And that was definitely one of the hardest lessons I had to learn,
Mm.
and it prepared me for what I do now, which is the family constellations work. And when I went to that first workshop that I was telling you about, I think one of the reasons I took to it so quickly was, to me, it was A Course in Miracles in action without calling it A Course in Miracles. So because it was all about shifting from fear to love, seeing things
Right.
from a different perspective, including everyone. No one is left out in family constellations. Everyone has their place, and
Mm.
seeing it with different eyes. So again, it just really spoke to me. And I think that's why it resonated so deeply, is because I'd already been studying the course since 2006. So I
Hmm.
was 6 years in when I found family constellations. And so family constellations it's a healing modality that's been around a long time. It's was created by a man named Bert Hellinger. He's a German man, and he was born in Germany in between the two world wars. And so he was a teenager during World War II when all those horrible things happened
Yeah.
in Germany, and he actually served in the German army in World War II. His older brother died, but his religion kept him from being part of the Nazi party. So after the war, he became a Catholic priest and a missionary, and he went and lived with the Zulu tribe in Africa for 16 years. And he
Oh,
was very immersed in their culture. He ended up being the headmaster of a school, and that we often joke that he was there to convert them and they converted him because
mm,
he saw how much the Zulu tribe respected their parents. Like they honored their parents because that's mom, I honor you. That's dad, I honor you. And he also observed that they knew a lot about their family history. They knew what happened to their ancestors for generations back. Like we probably know our grandparents and maybe our great grandparents, some of us, and it is changing because of ancestry.com and
yeah.
23andMe, and which I think is a great thing. The more you know about your history, the less the
Hmm.
patterns have to repeat. But he witnessed this with the Zulu tribe. They were doing it before 23andMe
Hmm.
through oral tradition and passing down the stories. So
Yeah.
it moved him so much that he actually left the priesthood. He went back to Europe, studied traditional psychotherapy and other modalities, and then came to get, he put all these pieces together and created this thing called Family Constellations, which he was just by observing what happened. He didn't set out with any theories. He was just, this is what happens when
Yeah.
somebody is excluded from the family or somebody doesn't talk about a deep family trauma that
Yeah.
happened. And so then it, unfortunately, it repeats. So yeah, and it just kind of took off, and it's such a powerful modality, and it has amazing results. It's very well known in Europe and South America,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of now starting to get more popular here in the
Hmm.
US.
Hmm.
But which it's funny, it's creeping into like there's a show on Netflix called Another
Yeah.
Self that has a family constellations facilitator as one of the main characters, and they do a great job of explaining it. And
Hmm.
there's one of Gwyneth Paltrow's shows had a couple that went through a family constellations on her show. I think it was the Sex, Love, and Goop episode
Mm.
5. So yeah, it's sneaking in there,
And
which makes me so happy.
and are they representing it the right way, like in a positive light?
I think so, yeah. Like
Okay.
um the woman that I'll have to say it kind of made it a little strange the episode on Goop because she used some words that I don't really use. Like I use the word representative when I
Hmm.
talk about someone that stands in for someone. She used the word resonator, which sounded like some science fiction Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it's just
Yeah.
words. The basic premise was the same, and yeah,
Ah,
I think they
correct.
did a good job representing it.
Hmm. John, going back to the patterns of addiction, because I also come from a family, a lot of addictions in the family. But
Yeah.
when you talk about family constellation and, patterns repeating, and you know how they say that some things are genetic and some people need to be like, I've been told all my life, you need to be careful, this, that, right?
Yes, yes.
So how can you talk about the connections between family, how things can heal, during a family constellation, how it doesn't have to repeat, and
Yes.
where one doesn't have to live with fear constantly. Yeah.
That a great question. And it is very common that something like addiction or alcoholism gets passed down. And what I've seen and observed and learned in my training was that it's when there's not a way to connect with love, we will find a way to connect. So, say we have an alcoholic parent that we just can't connect to either because they're emotionally unavailable or physically not available, or they're not around, or they're angry all the time and we're scared of them. We can't connect with them. So unconsciously, our need to connect to our family or of origin is so strong that we
Mm-hmm.
may say, well, I will never be like my mom, or I'll never be like my dad. and then you find yourself being just like them. And it's not a conscious choice. It's not like you did anything wrong, but it's a way that our soul finds to connect with our family. So it's almost like taking over the family business of addiction. Like, they may want you to follow in their footsteps with a business, but it's not something you want to follow in their footsteps with addiction. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a way to be connected. So when I'm setting up a family constellation and addiction is part of the puzzle, just to, give a little background for
Right.
listeners who don't know what it is. So we have, normally it's a group of people. It can be a one-on-one session, but we actually, once I hear someone's story and find out what the challenge is, what's the pattern that's repeating, or what is the situation that, despite all their other things they're doing in the medical profession, like there's a health challenge that won't go away, or
Right.
any kind of pattern that's repeating. I listen for clues of what they tell me about their family history. And I
Mm.
know that if they're talking about addiction, then addiction can be something like either, because one of the tenets of family constellations is whatever we reject in a parent finds its way to come into our life. So I rejected my mom's alcoholism. I didn't want anything to do with it. And for a long time, it felt like all I met were alcoholics, like my partners, my roommates, my friends. Like it was a parade of people that had an issue with alcohol. And I wondered, is there anyone on the planet that doesn't have a problem with alcohol? Because I don't seem to be able to find them. And I
Yeah.
see now that it was because I was rejecting that in my mom. And so even though I didn't become an alcoholic, I attracted them because I knew that energy.
Right.
So once I made peace with my mom's drinking, and it's not like I wanted her to keep drinking, of course, but I found a different way to connect with my mom other than her drinking. So
Right.
my mom was very resilient. She had a lot of challenges, and bless her, she kept going. And one of the things that kept her going was her sense of humor. She could make a joke about any situation, no matter how serious or scary it was. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I have adopted that. I've inherited that. So I'm going to be connected to my mom through her
Yeah.
resilience and her sense of humor. So I consciously say that. So what I often tell my clients is if there is a pattern that they're worried that they're going to inherit, or a health challenge,
Mm-hmm.
that they find a photograph of their parents, or just imagine them in their quiet time before they fall asleep, and say, "Dear mom, let's be connected through humor and your resilience, not addiction." And there's something
Mm.
about, it's like unplugging from one channel and plugging into another, because
Yeah.
it's not unconscious once you see it. And the same with a health challenge. Like my father passed through cancer back in the 70s. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get, he died when I was 7, so I didn't have that much time with him. But as a
Mm.
way to connect with him unconsciously, it's been in the back of my mind, like, oh,
Yeah.
and he died of skin cancer, and I actually have had to have some things removed, some not so scary basal cell
Mm-hmm.
carcinomas removed. And when that was happening, right before the surgery, I had some right under my eye here. And the night before the surgery, I got so emotional. Like there was tears that were coming out of me that seemed very out of proportion to what
Yeah.
was happening. And I realized that I was like the release valve for my family, because no one talked about my dad's dying, even right up till the end. They were all in denial or just didn't want to talk
Yeah.
about it. So I realized that this, because I knew family constellations, I could see, oh, this is the emotion that I've been carrying for my family that I'm now releasing. And
Mm.
one of the things that I've noticed about my connection with my dad, he was in the Navy, and I love being on a boat. There is something about being on the water, whether it's a paddle boat or a cruise ship. I just love it.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
again, the same thing. I would say, dear dad, let's be connected through our love of the ocean and the sea and not cancer. And
Yeah.
it's a way to remove the unconscious connection and connect consciously with something that is helpful. That is, so that's the kind of thing that we're working with, that
Yeah.
it's mostly things we're not aware of, but
Yeah.
when you hear it, like, oh, you start connecting dots that maybe you wouldn't have before.
Wow. I'm just getting overwhelmed with the statements. And yeah, I mean, I've also started learning family constellation recently, and just like the plethora of information out there, it makes it easier for us to debunk a lot of things, right? And we carry so much, sometimes pain and sometimes baggage, especially from our parents.
Yeah.
And that's like seems like the most difficult relationship, even when I look at my clients and I'm like, oh God, like, they don't want to look at that, and somehow that's the energy that's blocking a lot from getting into our
Yes.
lives, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
I gave a presentation a few weeks ago, and there was a woman in the audience that she raised her hand and she said, well, what if your mother was a psychopath? And what if,
Exactly.
she was harmful and narcissist, and I don't want anything to do with her.
Yeah.
I'm better off on my own. I want to cut ties with them. And I said, well, that's a choice. And it's not for me to say that she shouldn't do that. I do know from doing this work over 10 years that it's hard to be that person out in the world without anything to anchor you or to any support from behind. And if you say that one of your parents, maybe, they died before you were born, or
Mm-hmm.
they were carrying so much and they were just awful, abusive. If you can find one thing to be grateful for, even if it's just for the gift of life, that something they came together in that moment in time so you could
Yeah.
be here, that would be enough. Because I often compare it to a jet airplane flying. If one of the engines goes out, it can still fly, but not as far and not as efficiently. And you
Mm.
can survive in the world completely cutting off one parent. But if you can find something, and I know it's a big ask for some
Mm-hmm.
people because
Yeah.
it's been really traumatic. If there's one little thing, one balloon one of your
Mm.
parents bought you when you were little, or like, hold on to that memory. Let that be your connection, even if it's you have the same eyes as them, or something
Mm.
positive that feels good and feels true for you. It will
Mm-hmm.
serve you very well in moving
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. That I guess makes, I mean, at least it makes me feel very light. And it also, I guess, makes
Yeah.
people feel at ease rather than, having to stay in touch or be in their physical proximity. What we are talking about is just that feeling, right? Rather than
Yes,
having to do
exactly.
something. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Sometimes the
Hmm.
best way to love someone is from a distance.
Oh yeah.
Be safe. You don't have to have them over for dinner every Sunday
Hmm.
night.
Yeah.
If it's toxic, if it's harmful, but just
Hmm.
finding a way to have them in your heart,
Yeah.
will be very beneficial.
Yeah. So John, when you talk about setting up a constellation, is that the unconscious field that's getting, like, that's rising up, or like that's giving us that energy?
There are so many ways to describe it, and depending on the setting I'm in, I could be more scientific and call it the morphogenetic field. This Sometimes people call it the Akashic records, sometimes people call it God, spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Family constellations, there's a term called the knowing field that we
Mm-hmm.
use. And that is, when we did that workshop together in the pyramid at Unity of Houston,
Yeah.
the pyramid then becomes the knowing field. And in this knowing field, because of our common intention, any information that will be helpful is available. So it's it freaks me out in a good way every single time, because something will happen. Somebody will, I was speaking about my mom's alcoholism. So when I
Mm-hmm.
was in my training, one of my sisters came to visit me, and she came to a constellation that my teacher was facilitating. I was still learning, and we did a constellation for my sister, and there was a representative for my mom, and we didn't talk about my mom's drinking in that. And all of a sudden, the representative from my mom said, I don't know why, but I feel like I'm drunk. And my sister's jaw hit the ground like, oh my God, how did she know that? And there's something that happens that just coming into that circle, that healing circle. So you can
Wow.
call it love or whatever word you want to use. It's
Mm-hmm.
beyond me. And
Yeah.
I just am so grateful for the generosity of the knowing field, because it lets us know, it gives us information that helps somebody let go of something they may have been carrying for decades that they didn't even know
Yeah.
they were carrying.
Yeah. Wow. And then just delving a little deeper into family constellation, John, there are the orders of love, right? So
Yes,
where parents give and children take because they're bigger and they're smaller. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because there's one thing that happens in various societies. I don't know about the US, but maybe definitely in India and other cultures where parents and children stay in the same house, and then they grow, and then they're grown up, and now they're still staying in the same house, and then the power dynamics change. So do you have anything to talk about, how that works?
absolutely, absolutely. Especially, I wish I knew some of these family constellations concepts before my mom passed, but I think I did okay. But
Yeah.
but that is such a common question, because yeah, as our parents age, they rely more and more on us to do some of the things that they can no longer do, like taking over the finances, or being their health advocate, or even cleaning the house, or taking care of things, driving them places. It feels like the roles get reversed, but that's a very slippery slope, because as you describe, and we talk about something called the orders of love in family constellations, and that is those who come first come first. Our parents are the big ones and we're the little ones. It's their job to take care of us, not our job to take care of them. And those
Mm-hmm.
role, even younger, like I knew that I had to take care of my mom when her drinking was so
Mm-hmm.
bad. And it gets confusing. Now, that's not to say that we don't help our parents when they get older, and all the things that I said a few minutes ago, we can still do. the I think the most important thing to remember is, even while I'm doing those things, my mom is still the big one. I'm still the little one. And if I have a challenge with my mom, I can ask her parents to help me out, with, because it's their parent, even if they're not still here in physical form, asking
Right.
their parents to help them, because our job is to take care of the ones that came after us, and
Mm.
they are relying on us. So again, it's often I'll have someone say in a constellation, Dear mom, you're the big one, I'm the little one. It's your job to take care of me, not my job to take care of you. And what's usually even more powerful is the representative for mom, or in some cases, their real mother, if mother and child happen to be there, the mother say to them, Dear John, I'm the big one, you're the little one. It's my job to take
Mm.
care of you, not your job to take care of me. And there's something so freeing when you hear that, because it's almost like we need permission to
Yeah.
not be the caretaker. And it's because when those orders of love get confused, nobody feels good. I know when my mom, um my sisters would come visit her, and a lot of times she would get so mad because they would baby her. They wouldn't let her do anything on her own. They would, no, let me get that for you. And she would be like, I'm not a child. And
Yeah.
there, of course, there were some things that they had to do for her that she wasn't able
Mm-hmm.
to do, but keeping that in mind, that they're still the big ones and we're the little one, when you do that, it just gives them their respect and their dignity.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
then we can focus on those that came after us, whether they're biological children, nieces and nephews, clients. But it's just the right order of love, because they have someone behind them taking care of them, and it just feels better for everyone.
Yeah. Um, John, I read somewhere that ancestors' blessings have the power to change your destiny. So, do you want to talk about that?
Sure, sure. I think that what I've seen so many times and what I feel to be true in my heart is that whether they were able to say it or not while they were here, our ancestors want us to do well. They want us to have a happy, healthy, prosperous life. They bless us to do it differently. And that's one of the truth statements I'll often have an ancestor say to a descendant. I bless you to do it differently. You honor me by having a happy, healthy relationship, or you
Yeah.
honor me by being abundant beyond your wildest dreams. So there's
Mm-hmm.
something that happens, it's akin to survivor's guilt. If we don't feel like we can be part of the family, or it's not fair, our parents or our grandparents struggled so much, and
Mm-hmm.
I have so much more than they did. We almost feel guilty that we've got more. But if you take a step back and look, of course that's what they would want for us. Why would they have gone through all the struggles and overcome all the challenges, and some of them left their homeland to a new country to start in a new place, or just the wars that they survived, or the uprisings, or the social injustice, all the things that they stood for so that their children could have a better life. That's really what they want for us, again, whether they were able to express it or not. And
Mm-hmm.
so hearing that and knowing that the best way we can honor our ancestors is not keeping ourselves small, is not having um, money problems, is not having health issues, is not having more discrimination. Like, they want us to have a better, more expansive, more opportunities. They want all that for us. So that's the
Yeah.
best way we can honor them, is by having all that they couldn't even imagine that we could have had.
Wow. That's so profound. I mean, I think we are so like some of us are so addicted to suffering and drama that it's difficult for us to see this other side and to give ourselves
Yeah.
permission to thrive. Do you?
Yes. And it's I don't know. Well, I would just frame it differently, because we have these unconscious loyalties. It's almost like saying, I see how much you suffered, mom, and because I love you, I will suffer too. I'll do it the same way. So yeah, it
Mm,
does look like an addiction to drama, or it's gosh, I'm like, this person is just repeating the same pattern over and over. But if I
mm,
can look at it with the eyes of compassion, like, they are carrying the family burden, they are entangled with
right.
an ancestor who also suffered, and they're actually doing it out of love. When I think about my mom, and I mean, she would cry all the time, and she would lock herself in her room. I see, my mom lost her dad before she was born in a swimming accident. So she never met her dad. He died like a month before she was born. And then she
Oh.
lost her firstborn child after a few days. He was born very prematurely. And then she lost her
Mm,
husband early in his 40s. So that's a lot of loss for one person's life. So I understand why she turned to alcohol to numb some of that pain. But at the same time, little John at 10 years old wanted his mommy. He wanted
mm,
someone to be there for him. He wanted dinner and, all the things that moms do. And she just wasn't there. So I thought, well, maybe if I just take on some of this pain, then she'll feel better. And we do it out of
mm,
love. And unfortunately, it doesn't help, though. All it does is keep the chain of pain going from generation to generation. So
mm,
in a family constellation setting, I'll have someone hold on to something like a pillow, or something really heavy like a vase, or something that you can feel the weight of it, and
mm,
say, put all the pain that you've been carrying for your mom in that vessel, in that pillow. Imagine all the
mm,
times that you were sad. Imagine all the times that she didn't pick you up at soccer practice because she was drunk, or all the times that she said nasty things, and all the hurt. Just imagine it going in that vessel and then giving it back to her. And I've seen it so many times that children are very resistant. Like, I don't want to give that to my mom. She's already
Yeah.
suffering. Every single time the parent reaches for it, they want to take it back because they don't want their children to suffer and carry a burden for them. And the good news
Right.
is it doesn't just stay with mom. Then mom can hand it back to her mother who
To happen.
experienced the same pain or, losing her husband at a young age. And then they pass it
Mm.
back and it gets smaller and smaller until finally it's nothing. But so when I hear that someone is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're doing that again, or it makes me think, I wonder what they're carrying for their parents or other ancestors that they don't even know they're
Interesting.
carrying. They think it's theirs because they're the ones feeling it and experiencing it.
Wow. That's very powerful. And do you feel like we can everything that's happening can be seen from those lenses, like from a family constellation lens?
I think so. I think so. I mean,
Mm.
because we also get good things. I don't want to be all gloom and doom. We get,
Yeah.
a musical talent or artistic ability or a good sense of business or a
Mm-hmm.
resiliency or a sense of humor or, learning a lot of great things from our parents. We
Mm.
get a lot from
Mm.
our ancestors. But I
Mm.
do think that you can trace back most things. I mean, of course, there are other factors at play, but
Right.
a lot of it is coming from looking at that lens. It's at least part of it.
And John, when you talked about exclusion and probably the person who's been excluded, we or somebody can have loyalty towards that particular person
Yes.
and then start, living that life. Can you shed some light on that? Like, is that a person who's the black sheep or somebody even people don't even know about in the family, who's left the
Yeah.
house?
There are
Yeah.
so many ways that someone can be excluded. It could be
Mm.
something as simple as a little one dies young and it's so painful
Oh,
that no one wants to talk about it, understandably so, because it is so
right.
painful. It could be
Mm-hmm.
someone that marries somebody of a different faith tradition, and ooh, we don't talk
Mm.
about that because, it feels like a betrayal to the family. It could be somebody
Right.
who's committed a crime that's in jail, and we don't talk about that because it brings shame to the family. Or someone that's been
Mm.
institutionalized for mental health reasons. It could
Mm-hmm.
be someone's gay or transgender, and that's
Yeah.
they're kicked out of the house. It could be, so many different reasons why someone gets excluded. Some of them are intentional, some of them are unintentional. And
Mm.
the idea that Bert Hellinger came up with that he felt to be true was that just like we have a soul, the family has a soul. And the family soul wants two things. It wants love to keep flowing through the family, and it wants everyone to be included. It wants the family to keep
Mm.
going. And when something happens and someone is excluded, like I use the example of my own family because it is such a clear example of, so I mentioned that my grandmother's husband died young in a swimming accident, and then my father died young through cancer, and then one of my sisters lost her husband at a young age. So here's three generations of women that were widows at a young age, and people might look at that and say, "Oh, your family is cursed." When actually, what I look at it is it's just a pattern that was repeating because
Mm.
my grandfather was unintentionally excluded. It was 1930. The Great Depression was in full swing. My grandmother had a baby on the way, and I don't think she had a lot of time to mourn the loss of her husband. She had to figure out how she was going to get a job and put food on the table when there were no jobs, and
Mm.
she had a baby to think about. And so, in a way, my grandfather was excluded, and she didn't have time to process that emotion. So, that sadness got passed on to my mother. And it was like my
Mm.
mother saying, "See how much I love you, mom. I will do the same thing, and I will marry somebody who will die at a young age." Now, obviously, it's not something she would say consciously or set out to
Right.
do, but those patterns repeat until everyone is excluded. It was the family soul's way of trying to bring my grandfather back into the family and be
Mm.
represented. So I love that two of my older siblings found my grandfather's grave in Pennsylvania and honored him. And we talk about him
Wow.
to just, even if it's just lighting a candle for that person that was excluded, or planting a tree, or a flower, or getting an angel statue and putting it somewhere, or doing something that has meaning to you to bring that excluded one back in, and then that pattern doesn't have to repeat.
Wow, profound. And so, uh, there's so much love flowing through these rituals, or something that you can do for someone just to acknowledge them, right? And then it can just
Yes,
break the pattern. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's all about love. It's just wherever love was interrupted, like a
Mm-hmm.
sprinkler system in your yard, if one of the spigots gets broken, the water finds another place to come up. And we just
Mm,
want love to be flowing through every family member. Everyone has their place, even if they've done terrible things. We say in family constellations, they might lose their rights, but they don't lose their place. They still, dad is dad and his place is behind us on the right. Mom is mom and her place is behind us on the left. Our siblings are next to us. Our children go in front of us. Like, everyone has their place. And when we give everyone their place, it just feels better. Like, when I
mm-hmm.
mentioned my oldest brother only lived a few days. So I'm actually number six. I'm six. I'm the last one of six, not the last one of five, which is what I mean, we
Right.
knew about my mom's first child, but I always thought of him as the little baby who only lived a few days. It never really sunk in that he's my big brother until I
Mm-hmm.
did a family constellation where there was someone representing him, and he said, "Hey, I'm your big brother. I'm looking out for you. Thank you for seeing me today. Thank you for recognizing me as part of the family." Because even though he was only on this earth for 5 days, he's my brother and he has his place. And so I have a family portrait where I've hung a little angel ornament on it because it's everyone except for him. So that's my way of doing something that has meaning to me, to bring him into the family and give him his place, so that none of the other people in my family, the descendants, have to lose a child that way.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Um, so John, then when a client comes with an issue to you, like what are the do you direct them to a particular modality, or like Course in Miracles and Family Constellations are the two things that you sort of work with?
Yeah, those are the two things that in my coaching sessions, I use elements of both from the course and from family constellations. Sometimes it's so clear that it's an ancestral trauma that I say, yeah,
Right.
it's probably, I think it would be benefit you greatly to do a family constellation session, either a private one. And I just interview them and find out, get some
Mm-hmm.
background about their family. Sometimes it's not that, it's just they're caught in a fearful way of looking at everything. And that's where the course comes in, is just offering a different perspective, just offering, there's another way to look at this. And that's one
Mm,
of my go-to prayers is, Spirit, help me to see this differently. And every single time I ask that question, an idea that I never would have thought of pops into my mind. And I try to offer
yeah,
tools like that to my clients. So it depends on what they're experiencing, but I do think that they're so, for me, and again, not all family constellations facilitators have any knowledge or think that A Course in Miracles goes with
yeah.
it, but I see it clearly, so that's what I infuse into my work.
And then can everyone who comes to you be helped, like with whatever issue they come with?
you know I had to release my attachment to the results because I don't know what their soul's journey is. I think it's possible, absolutely, for this work to help every single person. But I have
Mm-hmm.
been in situations where I've been in a constellation where somebody was representing their mother and they're just like, see, she's not changing. I'm not in like, like, okay, there's really like, again, it's not for me to say, well, you need to change your way. Like, it's not time, or maybe it will never be time in this lifetime. I don't know. I
Mm,
have let go of the idea that I know best, because that's what I was doing with my mom my whole life, is she should not be drinking and then everything would be fine. And I don't know that. Obviously, that's not what was meant to be, because that's not what happened. So
yeah,
releasing my judgment of someone, like wherever they are in their journey. So do I think it could help everyone? Absolutely. Do I think a constellation would benefit pretty much everyone on the planet? Yes. And
yeah,
if someone is, sometimes though, those loyalties are so strong. That's one of the things Bert Hellinger said his biggest contribution to the world was how the lengths will go to belong. So sometimes if someone does it differently, that may be too scary. It might freak out their inner child too much to let go of the pattern, and it's not the right time to do it. So would I love them to experience more peace and think of, know that they are loved and know that they are
mm-hmm,
a child of the divine? Yes, I would love everyone to remember that. Sometimes it's not the right time. And so I just have to honor wherever they are.
yeah. And then same goes for the clients who come to you. If they don't really believe in the process, can they still see results?
They do,
Yeah,
this is the funny thing about family constellations is I kind of call it the gateway to woo-woo because people wouldn't necessarily go to an energy work or a prana healing or Reiki. That's just, or an angel consultation. That's just too weird. But everybody has a family and they've all done some interesting things. So there's something about a family constellation that people, I get skeptics that come and they say, I've heard
yeah,
this a few times, like, if I had known what this was, I would never have come. But I'm so glad I did because I got something out of this experience today. And it
yeah,
does, the presentation I was talking about a few weeks ago, it was not people that were necessarily um they might be new to the spiritual path, at least in this way. And they said, oh, I'm a believer now because something happens when someone walks over to a spot. And the way I do constellations, I like to do it blind, where
yeah.
I write on little pieces of paper who or what they're representing. So, and I fold
Mm-hmm.
it up so they don't know. But um, when they reveal who they can't say that I did it or that I made them say that or what, because they didn't know who they were. So it does make believers out of people. So it can help even if
Yeah,
someone's not a believer. Now, if someone is already on board, well, I won't say, I was going to say that makes it even more beneficial, but sometimes no. Sometimes the skeptics are the ones that have the biggest shifts because they didn't think that what was good, they would never have connected those dots. So yeah, it's I'm still blown away. Oh, it'll be 11 years in June since I did my first constellation, and I'm still blown away every
yeah.
single time by what happens, because some miracle, some connection, even if it's, I did an exercise at the end of one of my workshops a few months ago, and I put people together and I have them talk about their earth angel, somebody that has been such a blessing to them. And the
Mm-hmm.
two women that picked each other, that didn't know each other before they walked into that room, they both picked an aunt with the same exact name. Like, well, I
Wow.
picked my aunt, I don't remember what my Aunt Betty, and like, oh my God, you're gonna be my Aunt Betty. And they're like, how does that
Yeah.
happen? And it's the miracle of
Wow.
this work of it shows us how connected we are and how everything happens exactly as it's supposed to.
Mm. That brings me to the next question, John. How does a person become a believer, especially to to have that invisible, like to believe in this invisible dream and to just keep going and that one day it'll happen or things will get better. So like, what is the process that you sort of would recommend a person can take?
I just say try it and see. I could sit here for 5 hours and tell you about the benefits of family constellations, or even the power of just asking what would love do in this situation. And the proof is right there. When I have asked that question, help me see this differently, and an answer comes that I know John would never have thought of, then I know there must be something greater at work. So it takes practice, of course, but just like
Mm-hmm.
anything, you try it and you witness, oh wow, that, even if it's communication with someone at work and you try this effect and it didn't work and you try this effect. But one of my biggest forgiveness lessons recently, as I applied the teachings of A Course in Miracles, I in my old apartment complex, there was a couple that moved in next door to me, and they were fighting all the time, like very toxic, screaming at each other, profanity, like during morning, noon, night, all the time. And, I just try to keep my distance from them. And one day, Amazon delivered a package to my door that I thought, oh, a surprise from one of my sisters. And I didn't really look at it. It was late at night. I brought the package in, and the next morning, there's a pounding on my door, and it was this guy. Apparently they put the package on my doorstep that was for him, and he was not happy. And I gave him the pack. I said, I'm so sorry, I didn't look, it was my mistake, it won't have. And he was like, how could you do that? Why are you I mean, he was right in my face. And I'm like, and it shook me. And I realized, okay, one of the things that A Course in Miracles talks about is everything is either an expression of love or a call for love, and the appropriate response is always love. So I didn't try to hug him right then. I let him go in his apartment and I shut my door and I took a few breaths and I said, okay, I need to just imagine in my mind's eye love surrounding this young man. I don't know what's happened in his life. I'm guessing there's been some trauma, but let me just envision golden white light all around him. And just every time he crossed my mind after that, I didn't see them after that incident for a while. And if he crossed my mind, I sent him love. And about 2 weeks later, I was going down the stairs as he was coming up, and he said, hey, sorry about the other day. I overreacted. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, wow, this really works. No, it's not like, again, we
Wow.
didn't hang out and go to the movies afterwards, and I had already set into motion. I was moving for a lot of reasons, but it was like, wow, sending love. It doesn't, I can do it from a safe distance, but
Mm-hmm.
something shifted. So it happened. I've heard people tell me that when they do that with someone difficult at work or a family
Mm-hmm.
member, they just keep with their mind, just imagining them surrounded by love or sending love on ahead to wherever their destination is. Anything that paves the way for love to be present. And it's a game changer. Something happens. So that was a wow for me. I'm still kind of in shock that he apologized. And
Yeah.
yet, as
Wow.
another one of my friends said, how usual. Of course that happened.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And then we are going to be moving to the last section soon. But before that, what is
Okay.
the role of faith or, God or the universe, higher power in your life?
It's interesting because when I was a little guy, I was devout atheist. Like, how could there be a God if my dog died, my grandmother died, my dad died? There was so much death and sadness, and now my mom's drinking. Like, I thought that God was just something for people who didn't have science, if I'm
Yeah.
being honest. And then as I shared that there was that moment well, little by little I started having more faith. The more I was in the 12-step programs, Al-Anon, and they talk about, a higher power as you
Yeah.
understand it. And I started to kind of open up to the idea, but it was when I started
Mm-hmm.
going to the Unity Church in 2002, when it was God is love, God isn't any of these other things. And it played now. I am a firm believer that whatever you call it. I mean, I don't think God is this being separate from us. I just think of that word
Yeah.
God as unconditional love, and we can all tap into it. And it's the force that's the greatest force that it's what we are, it's what connects us. So it is like if you had told me that I would be talking about Jesus and of course in miracles back then, I would be like, no, 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 you've got the wrong guy. But
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
I've seen too much since 2002, and there have been so many miracles in my life that I have to believe there's something greater than ourselves that we can tap into, and that's not just we're trying
Hmm.
to, someone, here you go, you're on planet Earth, figure it out. That doesn't seem very kind. And if A Course in Miracles has done anything for me, it's helped me release the fear of whatever that divine essence is, and really trust it, because I've seen it work.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, just connected to this question, the act of being unattached. You know how they say that if you want to manifest something, just think
Yes,
about it, but then let go of it. Can
right.
that same principle be applied to even pain, and like how not to be so attached to the pain that's kind of going on in the family for generations?
I think so. Well, it's again, it's finding a new way to be connected. But I
Mm.
totally agree with that idea of, putting your intentions out there. Of course, it's okay to have your preferences, but I
Hmm.
know that some of the things I wanted that I tried to get, and then I got them and like, ooh, no, I don't want that. There's a great and kind of a rude line in the course that says, some of your greatest advances you have judged as failures, and some of your greatest setbacks you have judged as blessings. And
Hmm.
it's something like that, but it's like, yeah, how true is
Yeah.
that? So the thing that I wanted, so I
Yeah.
my philosophy is, think about how I want to feel in with my clients. How do I want to feel in the space that I'm living? How do I want to feel in my friendships? How do I want to feel in my relationships? And then I'll let the
Hmm.
universe fill in the details, because I don't know what's in my own best interest. I
Yeah.
surrender to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So now, John, since this show is about miracles and faith and hope, so do you have any stories of miracles with your clients over the years, and do you want to share some of those just so that people get motivated by your yeah.
Sure, sure. Oh my gosh. The one that comes to mind, right off the bat, when I think about that, there was a constellation I did, brought it towards the beginning, and this
Hmm.
woman, she raised her hand in a presentation, and she says, well, what about abortions? Because I've had a few, and I was young, I was in college, but I've been carrying that guilt for so long. Like, did I do the right thing? Are those little ones, is it bad? And she was, in later in life, she was probably in her 60s or 70s. And
Oh.
so we did a spontaneous constellation for her right then. And I asked if there was any other of the women in the group that had had an abortion, and a few people raised their hands. So I had them step in as her unborn babies and kneel down in front of her and just talk to her and say, Mom, I'm your little one. You are my mom. No matter what happened, you will still be my mom. And I'm doing well. I'm at peace. It wasn't my time to come. I don't have any ill will towards you. I'm doing
Mhm.
well. I'm fine. And we'll always have this connection. And then the next person did it. And the tears that came through and I asked them, does that feel true? And each one of them said, yes, absolutely. That feels
Wow.
true. And the next day, that woman looked so much lighter, because it's not something she thought about every day, I don't think, but she had been carrying that for 40 plus years, that she had done something wrong. And it was
Mhm.
so satisfying to see how how different her energy was after that when she released that, and she could have a new
Hmm.
relationship with those little ones. That was
Yeah,
really
yeah.
beautiful.
John, has there been a health breakthrough that you've witnessed?
Let's see. Hmm. Well, I mean, I can talk about my own experience, because I've had my own journey with cancer, and I a similar pattern happened because my dad had a mole on his back that he didn't get looked at, and
Mm,
my mom kept telling him, go get that checked out, go get that checked out, and he didn't. And I had a similar situation with a tumor growing on my sternum, and a friend
mm,
pointed it out, and I said, no, I don't think that's what it, I mean, cancer never would have occurred to me. But
right.
because I know this work, and because I have talked with my dad in spirit about let's do it differently. Let's be connected through our love of the ocean and of helping people. He also was someone that did a lot for the parks and recreation in my hometown. So, and it I've been on this journey, but it's in remission now. Like it's not the thing that's gonna take me out in this lifetime.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
really feel like giving back anything that I was carrying for him was a game changer, because I had one of my students do a constellation for me about a
Hmm.
little over a year ago, and she had me give any pain that I was still carrying from my mom, and I had done several constellations around that, and I thought, oh my God, is there more? And apparently there was. So I gave
Yeah.
anything I was carrying from my mom, and I gave anything I was carrying from my dad, and then the facilitator was really, really intuitive. And she had someone step in as all of my clients over the years and said, if you've been carrying anything for your clients, give that back to them. And that's when, like, boom boom, a lot of things happened. I was able to
Mm,
find an amazing healthcare practitioner here in Florida, and an amazing cancer center, and I've just been so well taken care of. So, and I really think that that was the catalyst that started that off, because I was very resistant to get back into Western medicine. I'm much more in alternative medicine, a believer in that.
yeah.
But sometimes Western medicine is, it's a part of the healing too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like they said, I mean, I've read this story so many times that, I kept praying and like God didn't send someone, and then,
Yes.
ultimately,
Yes, the
yeah, and
boat,
God is like,
and
I
then
was sending,
the
yeah,
helicopter. Like, well, I sent all those
yeah,
things. Why didn't you do it? It's such a great metaphor. It's a great
yeah,
story.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I was waiting for you, God, and yeah, and
Yeah.
God can come in any form.
Why didn't you do anything? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's
So,
another story
yeah,
that came to mind, if I can share, about money too.
yeah.
That there was a woman I did a constellation for, who her the her mother wasn't sure who her father was when she was
Mm-hmm.
conceived. Well, there was some question, but the mother actually did know. But she was dating two men at the same time, and there was one that was much more affluent than the other one. And so she picked the one who was more affluent and said, hey, I'm pregnant, it's your baby. And so this woman never met her biological father, because she was under the impression that it was this other man. And
Mm-hmm.
she struggled with money. And when I put money in the constellation, a representative for money who didn't know who they were, they stood on the other side of the room and said, I don't feel like I'm welcome here. And what we uncovered was, she had an unconscious resistance to money, because money was the thing that kept her from her father. So once
Mm-hmm.
we reconnected her with her father, with another representative representing her biological father, and
Mm-hmm.
they reconnected and reconciled, then money spontaneously walked over to her, because she
Mm-hmm.
no longer had this unconscious resentment towards money, because she had been reconnected with her father. And again, since
Wow.
then, she was a nurse during COVID, and like she traveled with her partner and like, oh my God, they're doing quite well now. So
Wow.
it's so interesting to
Yeah.
see like that's a dot she never would have connected. You know, she was doing
Yeah.
all the right things. She was doing the affirmations. She was releasing her limiting beliefs. But to think
Mm-hmm.
that somehow her money troubles were connected to her biological father and the man who
Wow.
she grew up as her father would never have occurred to her. So that's the kind of thing
Mm.
that we uncover in this work that is it again, it's so fascinating to me.
Yeah, yeah. It is. And then, wow. Thank you so much, John, for, I mean, I think I didn't even go through the questions that I intended to. It just went in its own, direction. And I
It
think that was
happens.
beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way they can approach you?
Sure. My website is my name,
Mm-hmm.
johnharoldmoore.com, and all the information about A Course in Miracles and my coaching and my constellations. There's a short introductory video that I go into more detail about what it is and how it works. And I'm on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram too, my name, John Harold Moore. That's
Mm-hmm.
probably the two best
Yeah, and
places to find me.
I'm gonna put all of that under the show notes or in the show notes.
Wonderful.
And
Thank you
yeah,
so
and
much.
yeah, John, any parting thoughts? I just enjoyed the interview so much. It's just like I'm brimming with, like it's the energy. It's just
Oh,
so healing.
oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, this has been I love any opportunity I can have to share about this, and you are just delightful. So if I can leave anyone with anything, just remember the truth that you are love, you are light, and your ancestors are cheering you on to live a happy, healthy, prosperous life. That is the best way you can honor them is by doing well, and they are so
Wow.
proud of you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, John. So yeah, I hope
Okay.
I'll get you back again,
Okay.
when we talk about something
Bless
else
you
or
for
even
doing
family
this work.
constellation.
Bless you for doing this work. I've loved listening to the other interviews and yeah, keep on shining your light too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, John.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
everyone.